take my hand and start a brand new day. And together as one we'll start to see some change. Take my hand and start a brand new day. Together as one we'll be stronger in every way.
I am not as fancy as that sounded. It's so fun to get to a point in your life where you're introduced in a way that makes you sound fancier than you really are. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean. So I grew up in a neighborhood in Massachusetts, in the same town our illustrious city manager grew up in, Southbridge, Massachusetts. But I grew up on a street that was known for having very little. And it was a street, we all know this street, we all have it in every town that we've lived in or worked in or been around. It's the street that you drove by and tried to get past as quickly as possible. It was the street that people who had resources would look at and say, what can I do to help? And people who didn't care would look at and say, well, that's somebody else's problem. It was the street where people lived, and you would wonder, what are they going to become and what's it like for them? I lived on that street. But living on that street and being inside of it was a very different experience than those who drove by and maybe would have thought it was. I lived with hundreds of people who did struggle every day, but their struggle wasn't what maybe you would think it is. So every winter, and winters in Massachusetts are no joke, every winter, inevitably, more than once, my parents would get to a point where they would have to choose between heating our home or keeping the lights on. And again, winters in Massachusetts are no joke, so heating won. And so the lights would go out. And those days were the best days of my life. Little me looked forward to the days when the lights would go out. Because here's what it meant. It meant that my family would get together and we would pull out the board games and the cards and the candles, and we'd get together in the living room and we would play and we would talk and we would laugh. And we would invite the neighbors over and we would share meals and we would talk about the future and we would tell jokes and we would hear folklore stories about the island of Puerto Rico where we're from. And it was beautiful and it was wonderful. And I had no idea what I didn't have. But I did know what I did have. I knew that I had a family that loved each other and enjoyed spending time together. I knew that I had neighbors who were willing to share and care about the people living next door and to look out for us. I knew that I had adults who believed in me and that would go out of their way to make sure that I knew that I was valued and valuable and could go on to do anything I aspired to. And I had a community that would wrap themselves around me and remind me that I was going to be okay even when times got tough. That's what I knew I had. I didn't know I was poor, but I did know what my assets were. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something that you may not already know. The day that you fill out your pledge form, the day that you make a financial commitment to United Way, the moment you decide to volunteer your time and spend some of your energy exercising progress for this community, is a day that you become an asset to a child, to a family, to a neighborhood, to a community. The day that you chose to support your United Way, you became something to somebody that may not ever know, but certainly understands their assets. You are that asset in this community. You are what we are grateful for. you are wrapping around someone, a family, somewhere, and letting them know that even when times get tough, they're going to be okay. And it's my responsibility now, as an adult, to say thank you on their behalf. Thank you for what you do for people just like me, who are looking for a reason to succeed and just need to know that somebody cares. I want to thank you, and I want to ask you to give yourselves a round of applause. Now I can look back at those times now, now that it's not fun to have lights cut off. Right? I can look back at them and I can recognize that I'm not in that position, and frankly, neither are most of us in this room, and I can see why it's not fair, why it isn't okay for someone to have to make those choices, right? We can all see that. Why should we have to choose between keeping our family fed, keeping the lights on, keeping them warm, keeping them safe? None of us should have to. And so there are some core beliefs that are absolutely essential to the benefit and future of this community and certainly to your United Way. And really what it boils down to is we believe, to the core of our essence at United Way, that every single person born to this earth is born with a set of assets, with a set of skills, with a set of talents, and a wealth of potential that can take them anywhere, but we are not all born with the same access to opportunity. There is a gap. And inside that gap is where we live. That's where we, your United Way, and those of you who support us, that's where we establish our roots so that we can do what we can to build a bridge between potential and opportunity. And so, we are bold in our declaration that it isn't okay for us to know that there are have-nots when we have. We are bold in our efforts to determine what can be done in this community and what has to happen so that people who have potential also have opportunity. And that's where your United Way emerges with an agenda focused on education, income, and health. And I can tell you from experience, both personally, professionally, and through observation, that the answers to what it takes to be successful in this life are not removed from any one of us, but are actually inherent to all of us collectively. Here's what I mean. When a child is afforded the best possible start in life through academic supports and early learning, it doesn't matter where they come from. Where they're going is good. The future is bright. And that's why your United Way cares about, invests in, supports, and mobilizes an effective strategy around early learning and early education to make sure every child, regardless of their socioeconomic origin, has the best possible start in life. Because it is the answer to what causes poverty, and it is the end to the cycle of generational poverty. We also understand that if a family can provide for itself through family-sustaining wages, through the workforce and its participation, then they can set the right example for their children, break themselves out of a position of poverty, save for the future, and be the example for their children that they need, without anyone else's help. They can give their kids someone to look up to. And so your United Way is focused on making sure that people who aren't getting by have the education, training, and access to employment that they need so that they can move themselves forward and therefore be the best possible teacher and example to their own children and those coming behind them. And health. Health, my friends, is the great equalizer. Have you ever tried to go to work with a toothache? Have you ever tried to make it through the day with a sinus infection? Do you know what it means to have a chronic illness that you could have diagnosed much earlier and taken care of? Some of us do, some of us don't, but those who are struggling to get by don't have equal access to effective health care and are not prioritizing their own well-being. But we have answers for that. So your United Way is focused on moving forward Healthy Roanoke Valley with an incredible collaborative made up of Carillion, made up of Lewis Scale, made up of other providers and social service leaders, because when we work together to affect change in healthcare in this community, we're laying the foundation for a successful evolution in poverty. We mean it when we say it isn't good enough to accept the status quo as it relates to the health and care of this community. When you're investing in your United Way, you aren't investing in ideas, you're investing in action. You may not always know that or feel that, but know that when you are making that investment, you are changing the future for children and families that are in the neighborhoods that mean the most for you, because they are where we can make the most significant changes. I want to thank you on the behalf of those who have been benefited by your support, and I want to thank you for taking this responsibility seriously and investing in what matters most. The idea that your neighbor's prosperity is your prosperity. Thank you for living here.